have they done to Jaws? Oh, and it's over. Oh, stop that. Stop it. Stop. Just get out of my face. Oh, what a boring sequel. Spielberg starts his career with one of the greatest movies of all time, and then they come along and make this. It just yawns its way into existence. Makes me think about Spielberg and if he's ever done a sequel, you know. You make one movie like Jaws, and then if Spielberg had done Jaws 2, I wonder what it would have been like. Has he ever done a sequel? Let me think for a sec. Oh yeah, Lost World.
Speaking of the Jurassic Park franchise, let's take a look at how those sequels disguise remaking scenes from the original, but mask it by recontextualizing the content. One of the most iconic moments from the original Jurassic Park is the scene where the Tyrannosaur escapes from its paddock and attacks the tour vehicles, taking place around the 1 hour mark. This scene shows the T-Rex appear during a thunderstorm. It investigates the two vehicles, eventually attacking one of them, turning the vehicle onto its roof and pushing it over the paddock moat to the trees below. During this scene, a character called Gennaro is eaten in a memorable way, and we see the characters Grant and Lex hanging from an electrical cable over the drop and narrowly avoiding the tour car as it falls. Now, in the sequel, The Lost World Jurassic Park, the filmmakers recontextualized that sequence from Jurassic Park in order to capture the audience's attention as they had done before. So in this film, two tyrannosaurs appear during a thunderstorm to inspect a research trailer that the characters are hiding in order to find their infant. Eventually, they attack the RV, overturning one of the two sections, very reminiscent to one of the two tour vehicles being overturned in Jurassic Park. They push the trailers over a cliff edge, leaving everyone dangling over the rocks and ocean below. Our characters then hang on to a rope for dear life, provided by a character called Eddie Carr, much like how Grant and Lex were seen in Jurassic Park. Oh, and to boot, Eddie Carr is eaten in a memorable way, just like Gennaro. So it's safe to say that The Lost World is a good example of a sequel like Aliens, which takes elements and moments from the original film and recontextualizes them in order to remake them. Then we get to the fifth Jurassic Park movie, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom. This film was notoriously labelled as a remake of The Lost World, despite it merely doing exactly what films like Aliens, Terminator 2, or even The Lost World had done in its level of remaking.
But nah, bring them to the mainland. Like that's any more clever. Seem familiar? Since The Lost World is a forgettable movie, was this their way of remaking that story to make money that it should have made the first time around?
And you have seen the setup from this movie in another movie called The Lost World, because this movie outright steals, picks up the motivation, the beat by beat characters, a dialogue, just lifts it up, find and replace, scratch out character names, write in new character names from The Lost World. It is it's not even like similar. It's not even like, it's reminiscent of The Lost World. It's exactly, I could describe to you the first 45 minutes of this movie, and it is exactly the same 45 minutes of The Lost World.
And you'd think you'd like the second half more because it turns into like schlock, but I like the first half more.
I hated the first half.
It's exactly a remake of the second one, which is bizarre because people didn't really like the second one.
You mean the second one from the original? You're talking about The Lost World.
I'm talking about The Lost World.
But something interesting also takes place with Fallen Kingdom. I've yet to see anyone else bring this up, so I thought I would just mention it here. Not only does it recontextualize the trailer sequence from The Lost World, which in turn was recontextualizing the one from Jurassic Park, it also mirrors what was seen in The Lost World at the same time. So going back to The Lost World, we see our characters get pushed over a cliff in the back end of the trailer. They do not fall to the ocean below, rather they hang over the drop for a good amount of time. At one point, the character Sarah Harding falls onto a sheet of glass in a tense moment where she watches in horror as cracks begin to appear. They obviously don't want the glass to break or she would fall to the ocean below and die. However, it eventually does, and Sarah is saved by Ian. And all the characters are eventually saved by Eddie Carr, who provided a length of rope for them to hold on to. We see them all hang on for dear life as the trailers fall around them to the rocks below, ending in a huge explosion. Now, as mentioned, Fallen Kingdom recontextualizes this sequence by changing the context of how we got there, and granted it does it in a much faster fashion, but it mirrors what was seen in The Lost World. This time, the explosion in the form of an erupting volcano begins the sequence rather than ends it as it did with The Lost World with the trailers crashing into the rocks. Instead of hanging over the cliff in a vehicle, this time the characters go all the way over, landing in the ocean below. Instead of not wanting the glass to break, the characters in Fallen Kingdom are desperate for the glass to break as their gyrosphere vehicle sinks into the murky depths. Instead of this sequence taking place in rain at night, it's during a perfectly sunny day, aside from the clouds of ash rising from the volcano. I'm currently unsure whether this mirroring aspect was intentional or not, but they seem so specific to just be coincidence. Now, this is just one scene, and Fallen Kingdom has many others that do similar things like this. So this is another fascinating example of a recontextualized sequel like Aliens, but one that was wrongly, in my opinion, labelled just a remake, without any in-depth look at how those remade aspects were integrated into the plot itself. So in conclusion, I think recontextualized sequels are misunderstood. For example, the complaints about Fallen Kingdom being a remake of The Lost World make no sense when those complaints aren't given proper context themselves. I've yet to hear anyone go deeper into that complaint, and I doubt anyone will. And I doubt even more that they would compare a sequel like Fallen Kingdom to a film like Aliens, which they most likely enjoy, even though the remake aspects to both are structured in the same way. I suspect their complaints come from another place entirely, but not articulated because these videos were produced quickly to capitalise on the click traffic of a new release, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone bring up the remake qualities of a revered film like Aliens. I get the sense that people will complain about the recontextualized aspects of a sequel they don't like because it comes from a place of don't fix what ain't broke, or in other words, don't try to repackage the same thing in a lesser story, which is fair enough, if true. But then the complaint actually lies in the lesser story aspect rather than the fact they repeat elements from a previous movie. If that were the case, then why does Aliens get a pass when it does the exact same thing? If I had to hazard a guess, it would be because it does something better with the pacing, the acting, the dialogue, the atmosphere, etc. Something other than the fact that it just copies elements from Alien. But with this video, I'll end on highlighting some examples of how different types of sequels that I've been able to identify so far show how recontextualized sequels actually come in different forms, and things aren't as black and white as they might otherwise appear. So you get ones that failed to give any context behind the recontextualized aspects. You get those that are recontextualized but don't do anything new. You also get those that are recontextualized, do something new, but aren't received well by audiences. And you get those that are recontextualized, do something new, and are received really well by audiences. Just something to think about.
Makes me want to look at another Spielberg sequel to discuss. The Lost World? Jurassic Park?